about the Newcastle Knights.
That's a great try from Newcastle.
Newcastle have won Rugby League's crown.
This is Nights to Remember, proudly brought to you by McDonald Jones Homes.
On Nights to Remember, where it all began.
What sparked one of Rugby League's greatest rivalries?
Peter Wynn remembers an historic day at the International Sports Centre.
And the Joust joins us for their take on 1988. Hello and welcome to Nights to Remember.
We're bringing you some of the Newcastle Knights' best moments and catching up with the players who've given their all for a football-mad region.
But first, it wouldn't be right to start the journey without taking a look back at where it all began.
So we've reached into the archives, back to the moment it was announced Newcastle would be joining the New South Wales Rugby League competition.
We begin with our great friend and former NBN television colleague, Lee Morn.
The public always wanted it. That was very apparent from the time I first broached the idea. The players all wanted it, certainly the first graders. The only people that didn't want it were the people with the blazers. And I didn't mind taking the blazers off them anyway.
For the Newcastle Knights, it's a professional push all the way to the Sydney competition. The Marketing and Promotions Committee say they've done their homework. And in the blue and red colours, the men of steel are ready for battle.
It pushed and shoved, and finally just about a decade to the day after the idea was broached in August 1976, we were accepted into the Winfield Cup. The full board met this morning and around 1 p.m. with myself and League Manager Graham Hards present, welcomed us into the Sydney Premiership from next season.
It's my great pleasure to announce that Newcastle will be in the Sydney Winfield Premiership competition as from season 1988.
Well, we had to do so much. We had to start from scratch. We didn't have a player, we didn't have a coach, we had some ideas.
Along with the new name, the team's colours and mascot were also announced. The team will take the field in red and blue, the same colours the side wore into the Sydney Premiership in 1908.
The fact that we didn't have a leagues club worked to our advantage because it made us sell the idea to the public that it was their football team and that they should come along and support it.
It was drumsticks and champagne to celebrate today's announcement that Henny Penny will be a major sponsor of the Newcastle Knights for the next 3 seasons.
Another important criteria is having somewhere to play. The Newcastle League has taken out the lease here at the International Sports Centre, and if successful in entering the Sydney Rugby League competition, would use this as the home ground. The Newcastle League also has plans to modify it from an oval to a rectangular playing field.
32-year-old McMahon becomes one of the youngest ever coaches of a Sydney first-grade team. He says coming straight into a new club in its first season is a tall order and admits the 1988 season will be tough.
It's not going to be easy. It'll depend on the players whom we can get on the paddock. The retention is going to have to be quite massive.
Ashley Gordon was the first player signed. Kiwi Sam Stewart was contracted shortly after. The squad came together in late 1987 and an air of expectancy suddenly gripped the valley.
All 3 New Zealand signings were especially flown out for a Meet the Media Day today at Tyrrell's Vineyard. Knights coach Alan McMahon says he's very happy with the Kiwi signings.
Yeah, well, the 3 guys are pretty big guys, aren't they?
A total of 33 contracted players went through this morning's 9.5 kilometre course, which, with its steep climbs, was more of a torture test than a road run. As for the very early start to training for next year's Sydney comp, McMahon says it's necessary. He says today's run was to evaluate the players' current fitness and give them a chance to get to know each other.
Some of them are quite good, yes, they are, and some of them need a little bit more work. But if we didn't have today's run, then we wouldn't have known that, so we have started.
Well, joining us now on those early years is Knights Foundation player Tony Butterfield. Butsy, welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
Well, Tony, we've been through all the vision from that road run, but there seems to be a few blokes missing. Where was everyone?
Well, normally we'd have a beer on a Saturday night, and guys got a little bit weary on the 10k Blackbutt run. There was a Heartbreak Hill. Guys hid, which it was not the right thing to do, of course, at the time, but Alan McMahon soon put pay to that, hiding behind a rock and catching anybody who might malinger.
Well, what memories stick in your mind from those foundation years?
I think the coming together of 40, 50 odd blokes who nobody knew each other. We had a small contingent from Sydney who had played probably not much more than 50 or 60 first grade games between them. Very few had any more than 10. And a lot of local blokes who really wanted to impress in the local market. They played locally, and generally speaking, it was a real camaraderie. I think we saw ourselves as pioneers. It was a chance to start a club, to start a new generation of footballers in an area like Newcastle that had seen 100 years of football, and they were astute judges, and we knew we needed to be prepared.
Now, that first squad became part of the community from day dot, and obviously attracting quality footballers was the first priority, but there seemed to be a great emphasis on the calibre of men they were signing. Do you agree?
Well, I think in any sort of recruitment process, you have certain characteristics that you need to find in your people. With respect to a football team, not dissimilar. We wanted young blokes because we wanted guys with plenty of tomorrows. They had to be tough. We knew we didn't have the offensive skills to necessarily take on the best teams, but defensively was something that we could control ourselves, and so they needed to be tough, and so they were the types of attributes and honesty.
And as we've seen in the highlights of those early years, Butts, the late Alan McMahon was instrumental to the Knights' early success. How do you remember Alan as a leader?
Alan was only a young coach. It's all of 33. He'd only been coaching for a small amount of years. He has a lot of enthusiasm. He liked to get out and train with us and kick the ball and try and put a few tackles on in the ball work sessions. Big stickler, he and Alan Bell, who were a great combination, really pulled us together and focused on those values. And for them early on, they insisted that we get on a wavelength that maximised, I guess, the potential that we had, and tried to put to one side some of the shortcomings we had. And I think they came up with quite a good combination there. We were very strong defensively, and had been for many years until more recent times. So Alan's legacy lives on. He was also a very funny guy. Very funny guy. Loved to smoke, loved a beer, loved to have a joke around. And for young blokes, many of them single in those early days, it was a great sort of environment to be part of, and to maybe achieve something very special that nobody else had had a chance to.
Well, Butsy, we'll get you to stick around after the break if that's okay, because up next on Knights to Remember,
Newcastle sparks one of the game's all-time great rivalries. You're watching Knights to Remember. Now, one of rugby league's greatest rivalries began on a sunny afternoon at the International Sports Centre for the Herald Challenge Cup.
The competition heavyweights Manly thought they were in for an easy day out. A drive up the F3 as it was in those days for a trial match against the league's rookies. But the young Knights, they had other ideas.
Before the match yesterday, it was obvious Sydney football would boom in Newcastle, with more than 21,000 turning up at the recently revamped International Sports Centre. It was to have been a David and Goliath affair. On paper, Manly was the better team, boasting 5 internationals. On the other hand, Newcastle was young, keen and had nothing to lose against the Sydney Premiers. Manly scored the first try of the match through Owen Cunningham, who sliced through some poor defence. After that, the Knights tightened up their defence and played gutsy champagne football to score the next 3 tries. Outstanding for the Knights was hooker Tony Townsend, who found gaps in Manly's defence all day and was rewarded with the Blues' first try after a grubber kick from Robert Chew. It was now obvious the Knights were not going to be a pushover in this year's competition. Midway through the first half, Newcastle is in again through fullback Glenn Frendo. The Knights' third try was scored by centre Glenn Miller wide out. Chew kicks the conversion to have the Seagulls down 22-6 at half-time. Only try in the second half was scored by Paul Shaw after great lead-up play by Noel Cleal. Despite the boil-over, the Knights are philosophical about the win and how they will fare in the coming season.
Well, Butsy, great scenes there after the Challenge Cup with, of course, Sammy Stewart holding the trophy up high. But we all know it's a story well told. But Manly thought they were in for an easy day out, and you really ambushed them.
We were confident we had the game plan. Most importantly, our game plan was all about defence. We knew that they probably wouldn't suffer well in the heat. We knew that they would come up a little, taking us a little bit for granted, that it was more a case of rolling the arm over and the tries would come for Manly. So that's often a significant advantage at any level, and we certainly took hold of that. And in the opening exchanges, it was brutal, and they didn't know what was going on. And but that was that pent-up enthusiasm that we had built for over the 4 months of the pre-season.
Now, do you think that that game there was the one that laid the foundation for the Knights' future years?
Absolutely did. To be part of that game, we had a lot of local blokes. Steve Walters was a particular player of note, country player of the year beforehand. So we had a lot of young blokes who were keen, who were tough, who weren't quite making it at their clubs. And then we had local blokes who gave it that local flavour. But that was the platform, and that set the tone for expectations in the years that would follow.
Well, as we know, the town took to their team almost instantly, but a massive amount of the credit goes to that team and the work you did to be accepted.
Well, we played an initial game after indifferent trial form. We were a little bit concerned about how we would fare against the big NRL teams. And the first game at Marathon Stadium, the newly configured Marathon Stadium, from an oval to a rectangle, was that opportunity, that one opportunity to make a good first impression. And we did that on that day.
Butsy, always good to chat. Thanks for joining us on our first episode of Knights to Remember.
Great to be here, mate. Thank you.
He loves taking a walk down memory lane, doesn't he?
Oh, he does, and great insights too.
Yeah, he's a great storyteller. Now, still coming down from the high of the Challenge Cup, it was time to go into battle for the Steel City in the 1988 Winfield Cup.
Well, Newcastle's first competition game drew a crowd of more than 26,000 fans, jam-packed into the ISC.
The opposition, a star-studded Parramatta Eels featuring names like Sterling, Kenny, Ella, Wynne and Growth.
Once again, fans were out in force with an all-time Newcastle Rugby League record crowd of 26,220 turning up. Like last week against Manly, Newcastle took on a team full of stars, including internationals Ella, Growth, Sterling, Kenny and Lindner. Newcastle scored first points with a penalty goal from Robbie Chew, but the lead was short-lived when Ella booted a penalty to even up the score 2-2. Kenny was devastating each time he got the ball and set up the first try for Eriksson. The Knights looked far from impressive. With so many unforced errors, they gave themselves no chance of getting into the match. After two more two-pointers from Ella, the Eels were up 10-2, with the Knights' defence looking brittle each time Parramatta threw the ball wide. Eric Growth scored the second try. He was far too big and strong for the defence. It was converted and Parramatta went to the break with a commanding 16-2 lead. Only twice did Newcastle look as though they might score a try. The first followed a chip from Chew. The second opportunity was in the second half when winger Quinton couldn't quite get to the ball and ground it. Parra's last try was a classic, with the ball going through the hands of Kenny, Growth and Ella. Newcastle will be looking to improve their performance when they meet Western Suburbs in Sydney next Sunday.
And on the receiving end of 26,000 passionate Novocastrians was former Parramatta back rower Peter Wynne.
Great to have you on board, Peter.
Hey, Steve. Thank you for thinking of me. Yeah, honoured to be here.
What do you remember about round one of 1988?
There was such a huge build-up everywhere in the media. That the season launched that year. Newcastle were part of that, being one of the new teams coming to the competition. Yeah, very excited, very fortunate to look back on the records and see my name mentioned there to play against Newcastle in their first game.
Now, looking back, what do you recall about the occasion? Obviously, the crowd.
Huge crowd, yeah. I just remember being outside, and I brought my family out with me that day, and to get through the entrance, it was quite amazing. There's so many people. I think it must have been 27, 20. I imagine. The way I'm trying to compare it to another game I played up there in 85. There's about 27, 28,000. It just felt the same. There's such a huge atmosphere.
Well, that Parramatta team, and I know because I was a fan at the time, was a star-studded side, but the Knights were also coming off the back of the Challenge Cup win. So was Parramatta wary?
We knew how important it was to the Newcastle Knights players that they weren't going to leave that field without giving their best. So certainly we were prepared. We were prepared for a tough game, and that's pretty well what we got.
Now, obviously, it's a long time ago, but did you feel there was a sense of history being created?
I think it was a big part in the history of rugby league. I mean, you got that. I think the Broncos came into the competition. Certainly, the Knights came into the competition. It was expansion of the competition. So there's a lot of history involved in Newcastle being a part of it.
Peter, it's always great to catch up, and of course, if anyone's in the market for great sporting gear, they know where to go.
No, if they don't score here, they'll never score. Peter Wynn scores. Smack bang, Middle of Church Street. Parramatta. Oh!
As a kid of the 80s, Parramatta mad, there were two Peters, Peter Wynn and Peter Sterling. So great to get to know him later in life.
Sure was. And growing up a Knights fan, Mountie, that Henny Penny jersey is the best in my book.
Show my age here.
We'll have more Knights to remember after the break.
Welcome back. You're watching Knights to Remember.
Now, as we saw before the break, Newcastle's first 4 points didn't come from a try. They were scored off the boot of a wiry young Queenslander, Mountie, who would go on to become a Knights chairman.
And not a bad bloke either. Well, Adam Murray caught up with Robbie Chew to recall the moment he made club history.
Robbie Chew, thanks for joining us. First of all, that goal kick, what do you remember of that day?
Oh, it was a good day, Adam. It was... There was, I think, maybe 26 or 27,000 people turned up for the first game. I think I was quite lucky in that I got the nomination to do the kicking. Otherwise, I wouldn't have any notorious playing results through my career. But I think the choice was either myself or Brian Quinton, and Sammy gave me the football.
When he gave you the football, did you realise what you were actually doing? Like you could have made history?
Only that I need to kick it. But I've got another dubious honour as well. I'm probably not only the first point scorer, I'm also the first one to miss a goal in front. So that happened a few weeks later.
And you're a toe poker?
I was, yeah.
Can you tell us about your toe poking days? Can you look at the days now and to how you kick goals?
5 steps and strike. No, it's a science to it now. I mean, I'm sure that the really good kickers had a science to the toe poking as well, but the round the corner guys and the tee, so you've got a consistent setup and a consistent shape and angle. It's all very different.
You've stuck around Newcastle. You came down from Queensland, and you stuck with the club for quite a long time.
Oh, I was pretty lucky, I think. And number one, I got an invite to come down. And I think I signed for 2 years, and as I said to you earlier on, my playing career sort of fizzled out in year one. I went back into the local comp partway through year 2, and then Alan McMahon and David Wade asked me if I'd join the coaching staff. So I was fortunate in that I got involved in the under-19s and then the under-21s. So I spent the first 7 years working with the club as either in the playing role or on the coaching role. So I was pretty lucky, I think.
And then you became chairman as well?
Well, that was many years later. Yeah, that was 20 years after I got here.
Did you think that you'd stay here this long?
We were very fortunate when we arrived here. We're a relatively young club, but we had a relatively young coaching staff as well. Not a lot of money, so all the players were encouraged to go out and meet various business people and introduce them to the club. And the consequence of that is that most of us were introduced to business people.
And what's the one thing you take away from the Newcastle Knights?
Its significance to its region, I think, and the people in the region. That's not to say that everybody's a Knights supporter, but everybody, I think, understands how important the Knights are to the community in terms of how you might feel good and the sporting team that you might like to support. It's also a really important aspect of the community get-together. We're missing it now. I know that for a fact because I've talked to plenty of people who would, dearly love to be watching football now. So I think for me the significance is just how important the club is to the community.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Well, there he is, Robbie Chew with Adam Murray.
He's just ready to leave.
I think Chew's got a new fan.
Well, now it's time for something a little different, Mountie.
Yeah, well, brace yourself because it's over to the boys from the Joust for Liam's take on 1988.
Hey, Liam.
Hey, Nagy, how are you, mate?
I tell you what, I was thinking this club's got some great memories.
Oh, some of the best memories, absolutely.
Remember that game against Manly where Joey steered us back from 12 points down?
That was 06.
06.
Yeah. 06. Tell you what, though, you're talking Joey, mate. You got to go back to 93, mate. remember I was there in the stands, that game against, let's face it, the very lowly Rabbitohs side, but 23 points on debut, mate, for a youngster. That's unbelievable.
93 was probably a bit before my time.
But it was 88, mate. That was the one. That stuck in the brain bank forever, mate. 26,000. Nova Castrian screaming on the hill. Big Slam and Sammy running the boys out, mate. It's unbelievable. I'll never forget that.
88.
And then Tui got those first 2 points off the tee. That was when I leaned into the trouble and strife and I said, Darl, we've got something here. We've got ourselves a footy club.
Your wife? Liam, how old are you?
Oh, you remind me of my grandson, Nagy.
Liam, don't be ridiculous.
When he was your age, of course.
All right.
Nagy? Kids these days.
Oh, they're funny boys.
I don't know where we go from here, and they'll be with us every week.
Oh, good. We can look forward to it. Stay with us because we'll be back to wrap up Nights to Remember.
Well, that's all we have time for, but we'll be back next week for another episode of Nights to Remember.
As we say goodbye, we take a look at the supporters who helped build the fortress, because as players past and present will tell you, our team is nothing without our town.
We leave you with a trip back to the NBN News archives of 1992, as told by a young Andrew Lobb.
Until next time, thanks for joining us.
Hits and Memories 2KO, Friday morning with Richard King. Knights fever certainly all over town at the moment. We've had 1 million calls for this, and if I don't play it, I think we're going to get lynched. This is Kick a Tinalong.
Go Knights, go, we're proud of you. Newcastle's red and blue. Newcastle Knights, go, go, go. Our town's coming through.
Knights fans take a one-eyed view to the world with the countdown to tomorrow's game. Houses, cars and buildings are draped with home team colours. It's a brave St George fan who'd show the Dragons colours in Hunter Street. But there he was. For most, the red and blue will do.
Go Knights, go!
I hope they win.
Footy fever became footy flavour for some.
Good stuff.
And they start young. The support shown by the students and teachers at Adamstown Primary should convert to a couple of tries at least.